Welcome back, everyone. Really great to have you with us as we start our second half of today's content from the Global Connected Packaging Summit. I've got some really fantastic content for you to enjoy, interact with. Don't forget to interact. So you have got the ability to ask our fantastic panelists or amazing experts questions in real time. They will definitely be willing to help answer those questions. Who we've got with us today is Katie Livesley and Gregor Murray. We are looking at unlocking brand storytelling opportunities in the data-driven retail frontier. So I'm really happy to have you guys with me this afternoon. It's going to be a really exciting discussion, but first, a big welcome to you both. Gregor, tell me something interesting that I'm sure you've been on our shows before, so I'm sure I probably do know, but maybe nobody else does about you.
Well, I mean, thank you for inviting me along again. It's always a pleasure to come and do these, and this is my third Connected Packaging Summit that I've done, which is fantastic. The thing I'll tell you is the sun is shining right here in Woking for the first time in what feels like forever. So I'm actually sat here in a blazer and a t-shirt, but I've still got my shorts on as well, just to keep that happy vibe going on.
Swimming shorts or normal shorts?
Normal shorts at the moment. I have just had a hot tub delivered, so as soon as this is done, you know where I'm going to be.
Oh dear. Katie, you're not sat in your swimwear, are you?
I'm certainly not. Unfortunately, the interesting fact about me is a lot less. My son's been not been very well, so unfortunately that. But the sun is shining in Manchester.
Oh, that's good. The sun is shining everywhere then. So that is very good. I'm very happy about that. So I don't know if you caught any of the sessions this morning, but we really had some fantastic discussion around the changing consumption behaviour, which also then touched on the change in retail and consumer behaviour concerning retail. And obviously, we're going to be talking a lot about that and how really packaging is evolving into this powerful medium, which is changing, I think, the rhythm in which we can consume things. I think it's changing the rhythm in which brands have the opportunity to talk to and to communicate to their consumers. And, it's allowing us to really look into it, a lot more data. And I think it's data driven, which is also changing us in terms of brands and media. Katie, I'm going to start with you. How do you think packaging can be leveraged as a storytelling medium to communicate what the brand wants to get across to the consumer?
I think that's interesting that you reference brand and consumer in the same sentence. I think brands, from an unboxing point of view, packaging has always been there. Product has been core, but packaging is so much more than a box now. It's very much the part of that one-to-one discourse a brand can have with its audience, but it's also a physical, real world emblem of that relationship. So it can act as an extension to extend that relationship. So in terms of giving them increased opportunities to engage. And that's why I think brands and retail spaces, especially supermarkets, are really opening up to the opportunity of what that one-to-one relationship with an audience has in terms of extending that immediate interaction into media. So you may see social extension on it. It's just, for me, packaging is really an opportunity to extend the narrative beyond that initial first touch point with their audience.
Absolutely. Gregor, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that. Brand values, identity, narratives. There's a lot there that Katie's kind of touching on. What do you feel about packaging and this kind of change?
Yeah, I mean, I was just taking a note based on what Katie had said, because there was something that I wanted to raise just as a result of her words. Yeah, she's absolutely right. Yeah, packaging is more than just a box now. It's your representative in somebody's house. And your brands will pay millions of dollars, millions of pounds, millions of euros for a short TV advert to get themselves into somebody's house during somebody's life. And yet your box is there. And it's sat on the shelves and you interact with it and you pass by it every day. And anytime you open the cupboard, there it is. I'm making more use of that being in somebody's house. That's an opportunity now that 20 years ago just didn't exist. And because of digital commerce, because of connected packaging and other technologies, it's an opportunity now that brands are starting to take seriously, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
interesting on that as well, that you referenced the fact that 20 years ago brands hadn't really awoken to the opportunity of packaging to extend into media, and I absolutely agree with that. It was very much, I think heritage brands such as Coke, for example, have always been aware that they were creating a legacy with packaging, and they tapped into the importance of consistency in that story, but it was very much more advertising led. So it would be the massive tentpole TV moment extended onto packaging rather than the other way around. And I think that is slowly shifting. I think audiences and also brands are awakening up to the opportunity actually that real estate has in terms of its own identity, not just becoming a piece of real world product that extends media. I think it's very much coming for full circle.
I definitely think there's a great ability for the packaging to be thought of as a media channel as well, because as you're saying, whatever you're doing on TV or whatever you're doing online or whatever you're doing wherever else you might be doing that as a media planner or as a brand, then actually if you kind of forget that opportunity that Gregor talked about, which is the fact that there is this item that is the absolute connection, then you're really missing kind of an opportunity to reinforce, get further awareness, etc. And so I think what you're talking about is really interesting. Gregor, in what ways do data-driven insights inform the design, the messaging of the packaging? How can this be resonating with target consumers?
Well, I think before you even get to the point of data-driven insights, you've got to take a little bit of a step further backwards and just talk about consumers as a general group. Target audiences don't buy products. What they buy is a solution to their needs, their missions, and their journeys. They buy things that satisfy consumer needs, customer missions, shopper journeys. Now, consumer needs, we always think of them as very basic terms of, I need food, I need water, I need heat, I need clothing. But actually, I also need a birthday present for that kid in my son's class who's having a birthday party on Saturday, right? Needs are very different now to how they used to be. Missions are around how I want to satisfy that need. So, in food terms, it might be a multi-pack or it might be a single unit. It might be, a gifting options where I'm buying online, and rather than having to wrap something myself, I can just gift it and have it sent direct to somebody's house. It could be, I want it in blue, I want it personalized. Those missions, they're very unique and very specific to me and my situation. And then my shopper journey, again, is very unique to me. And it might be, I want this delivered directly to somebody else's house, fully wrapped with a card, or it might be, I want it delivered to my house tomorrow, or I might want it delivered to my house on Thursday at exactly 3:30 in the afternoon. Everybody's needs, missions, and journeys are very, very different. What data allows us to do is to understand those needs, missions, and journeys, and then start building propositions around better satisfying those things. Now, in the past, brands have very much focused around the need. I'm a soft drinks manufacturer, or I'm a confectionery manufacturer. I satisfy the thirst need, I satisfy the hunger need, or whatever it might be. But now, again, something that wasn't possible 20 years ago, but with the advent of technologies, we can satisfy those missions a lot better. We can be very personalized, but still be a mass market brand. We can have optionality in the way that we deliver products to people. We can have subscription options. We can have optionality in pack formats that we've never had before, but are still viable within our supply chain. And also we can tailor some of those shopper journeys in terms of the way that we deliver, the speed with which we deliver, where we purchase from, how we collect, etc., etc. There's lots of different optionality available now that wasn't 20 years ago. And as a result of that, manufacturers have gone from this place where they were very, very guilty of looking at transactions right up until the point when somebody purchases. And as soon as you purchased, we start thinking about building loyalty and getting you to buy again. But we kind of stopped thinking about that moment from store to fully consumed and wanting to buy again, and what we can do with that space. And now that's back on the agenda again, and it's back on the agenda in a big way. And packaging clearly plays a huge part in filling in those gaps.
Definitely. I think there's so many different examples of it. Katie, can you think of any examples, putting you on the spot there, can you think of any examples that brands have, successfully used this space that Gregor's referring to connect to the consumers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, what Gregor was talking about is very much about data being an output, whereas, which absolutely didn't exist 20 years ago. But I think what's embryonic now, especially in packaging, is data as an input. So basically using that footprint to define audiences, understand how they engage, and extending that into media. So I think a brand that does it really well is Hoka. So they use their packaging as very much almost like a shop window into other brand extensions online. So particularly YouTube lifestyle, access to short form video, and also preferential access. So again, using packaging as a means of collecting that data as an input rather than just an output. And I think that's what's intelligent. I think brand storytelling on packaging is nothing new. What I do think is interesting is using packaging as a data strategic asset to inform how audiences or consumers actually extend their relationship with the brand past the point of purchase, from an ECRM point of view, but also from an engagement point of view. I mean, we talk about QR codes, which are still very prevalent. I think there's a bit of a weariness in the industry around QR codes and their efficacy. But actually, I think audiences still do use that, especially when it's based on, coupon led, for example, and or even access to content, that value exchange, and having that piece of real estate that allows that to be in shops and in people's homes, I think is really interesting. And I think Hoka does do that really well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well, talking about the value exchange, because if as a brand, all you do is use that QR code to land someone on the brand's website, who cares? That's a really boring,
Absolutely,
negative experience. If I had wanted to go to, I don't know, the Nivea website, then I would have gone there. And when I scanned the QR code, I expected to get some sort of experience, some sort of value exchange. And I don't mean Nivea by any means, other than the fact that there's a hand cream on my desk. So
yeah, that's one of our brands. But interesting you should mention that from a Beiersdorf point of view. Actually, if you look on your QR codes on Beiersdorf products, what it actually does is link you to ways or particular curated influencers on how best to use that product. And it, again, yes, it operates as a data capture moment, but it's adding value to the experience.
Yes.
And I think that is something that's really important, not just in packaging, in terms of all brand comms.
Yeah, definitely. Why do I need this? If there's no reason, then it's a turn off. But if it's something interesting, is it a recipe, how to use, is it a loyalty
adding
program?
value, and also making you part of that brand culture and community, I think that is definitely what audiences are seeking. It goes right back to brand storytelling. People do and what Gregor was saying about buying from a need state, people also buy from an affinity state. They want to be seen as a part of that brand in many cases and instances of purchase. And it's about being able, for me, it's about being able to extend that relationship.
Yeah, and it's an environment which, of course, will contain much more information that can be put on to the actual physical packaging, but also can maintain brand consistency. So it becomes this kind of playground in which the brands can almost put whatever they want, as long as it's interesting and provides value. I think it becomes even more interesting when we talk about e-com, and with the rise of e-com, that means we've kind of lost the retail shelf. That kind of brings to me an even more important place for us to think about packaging. Gregor, what do you think about the role there in terms of the physical digital shopping experience, rise of e-com?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about packaging being the bridge between digital commerce and physical commerce and the user experience, right? And a lot of manufacturers, they talk about having connected commerce strategies or omni-channel commerce strategies, but actually they're not always, in trying to link different channels together, they're not always trying to link even their physical assets together. And I'll give you an example of how packaging can bring things together, right? I used to sell wines and spirits for a living. So 25 years ago, I used to sell wine. And the number of people that came up to me with a bottle in their hand and say, well, I like this. I'm like, I have no idea. I've never met you before. How am I meant to know what it is that you're going to like? But here's the really interesting thing, right? If you go onto Amazon right now in the UK, Tanqueray gin have over 8,000 product ratings and reviews. 8,000 at an average of 4.8. Okay, so pretty good. Why isn't there a function where I can just walk up to the Tanqueray bottle and scan it with my phone and it will bring me up all of the Amazon ratings and reviews that other customers have given? We talk about value exchange, and we've just been talking about value exchange. That is a valuable piece of information that I could be provided with, because the 16, 17, 18-year-old kid working in Tesco's isn't going to know whether I'm going to like a bottle of wine. But the 2,000 people that have already bought it on Amazon or even on Tesco.com do. So why isn't there that connection that shows me? And yet, similarly, customers are forever asking questions. And there is no way that you can train people that work in a supermarket to answer all of those questions around, is this vegan? Is it gluten-free? Is it vegetarian? Does it have nitrates in it? Is it ultra-processed food, et cetera, et cetera? You can't train them to do that, but the packaging can. There are so many ways that you can use it as a bridge, but we're just not using it yet, but we should be.
I've got a point of view on that. So first of all, I think what you've just raised is really interesting in terms of that ownership of that brand to direct to consumer relationship that Tanqueray would have with that, Friday night shopper buying a bottle of Tanqueray, because of, massive behemoths such as Amazon owning that relationship. There's an obvious strategic benefit for them housing that data behind a walled garden. And I think that is massively holding back data capabilities and that relationship between direct to consumer. It's almost like rooting the walled garden in the real world. I think brands, because of the scale of Amazon, that data is that first party data isn't first party really for Amazon. It's third party data resold from a brand to Amazon, and it's massively valuable. So I think brands who will win in that sort of digital economy are ones that circumvent both Google, Facebook, and Amazon, and actually begin to own that direct to consumer relationship.
Yeah, I mean, look, I use Amazon as the example because almost everybody can relate to Amazon. But manufacturers are constantly doing customer research. They're constantly going away and speaking to their customers and asking them for information and asking them for effectively ratings and reviews. And you can use that, and you can use your packaging in order to communicate that. Similarly, most brands now have their social media pages. The holy grail of social media, as we all know, is user-generated content. User-generated content can be shared through packaging if we wanted it to be, but there are very few manufacturers, particularly within the supermarket grocery industry, who are doing it. Red Bull are a prime example of an organization that's constantly sharing user-generated content. Lego is another fantastic opportunity, another fantastic example of user-generated content being used to actually determine what the next range and portfolio should be and how packaging should be. And if you buy Lego, which I do quite a lot, the instruction manual is now also a QR code on the packaging, so that before you even open the box, you can start looking through what it's going to be like to build and how long it's going to take, and There's links to videos of other people that have done it and showing off their models and all of that sort of stuff. And they're creating community by doing it. And, you know, to that whole point around value exchange, they're creating value. And if the customer then ends up giving one party data in return for it, that's great. But if they don't, okay, don't expect stuff. Just offer it because it's valuable and it's valuable to the customer.
Absolutely. And it's that ownership. I think, you know, the Red Bull and Lego, the brands you referenced, are really good at owning that direct to consumer relationship. They have a real thorough understanding of who their audience are. They understand that, you know, building Lego is very much not just about the actual practical activity of building Lego. It's also about, you know, showing off skills or building yourself and in terms of influence and advocacy in other platforms. And I think, you know, that is very, and from a Red Bull point of view, you know, they've always been great at being more than just a drink. They've always grounded themselves in, you know, adjacent cultures such as, you know, festivals, etc., sporting events. And I think it's rooted in the fact that they understand their audience and they extend that onto the packaging as a utility.
Definitely. And I think there's so many different kind of options for types of content in there as well. So obviously, if you're going to be at a sporting event and perhaps your product is going to be at this particular event, well, maybe there's something specific to that particular QR code leads to, which brings us to a personalized experience, which of course will bring more value. What do you think though, Katie, in terms of the ability to, as we move more towards the omnichannel retail landscape, but the ability to ensure consistency? This is going to be a new channel, a digital channel. That means the ability to change very quickly. How do we ensure that there's coherence across all the touch points?
What do you think there needs to be? So coherence for me is an interesting word. I think there needs to be creative optimized by channel. I don't necessarily think that it needs to be completely consistent across channel. You know, we've seen in media, you know, a 60-second brand experiential ad on, you know, a center break of Corrie isn't going to translate to a 6-second short in Facebook. And I think that's what we need to understand. You know, creative needs to be, and messaging needs to be optimized by platform. The story absolutely needs to be on tone, but I don't necessarily think it needs to be a didactic, this is what we must say across all things. Yes, there'll need to be an element of consistency for recognition and building brand equity, such as logo, but actually I think packaging, social, TV, linear, CTV can all be optimized to the nuances of their own platform. And I think that's the power really of true omnichannel marketing.
Yeah, I think you raise a really great point there, because it's about creating content for the media channel you're going to use, not getting your TV ad and going, right, I'll squish it a bit like that and I'll put it a bit like this.
Because you may as well, you know, you may as well consolidate your investment if you're doing that and just shove it all in a center break of Corrie. I think it is about optimizing creative by channel, which I think packaging is becoming, especially with the advent of retail media. You know, we've not even touched on the power of the aisles, or, you know, how data can basically personalize your shopping experience in the real world as you're actually moving through store. You know, I think that is definitely the next frontier, and packaging has such a crucial role in that.
Definitely. Gregor, have you got any comments to add to that, or maybe looking at the e-commerce versus retail? Should the packaging be different even in those experiences?
I don't think it should necessarily be different between the two. I think there are points in which you should have digital commerce specific packs and formats and ranges, and yeah, clearly that should come with a different type of packaging. And there are additional packaging opportunities in digital commerce that you don't necessarily have in store, and they need to be capitalized on. I think the big thing is it needs to be relevant, right? Whatever it is you do, regardless of which media channel it is, and I do think packaging is becoming a media channel as part of the mix. It's got to be relevant, whatever your execution is. Yeah, in the past, I've seen people put QR codes on packs that tell you, that Nigel milled your wheat that's in your bread on the 23rd of April. And, he's got a master's degree in milling and he likes salsa dancing and he goes scuba diving when he's on holiday. Who cares, right? That's just not relevant.
You seem
right?
to know a lot about him.
Yeah, he sounds great. Give him my number.
But I'm in this industry, right? And I pick up on this stuff. But for the vast majority of people, like I think about my parents, like they're never going to scan the QR code, and even if they did, they just don't care, right? It's just not relevant to them. But there are times when the package that's in my house is going to be able, on the shelf in a store or on digital common, is going to be a hugely relevant media channel to me. And what manufacturers need to do in partnership with the agencies they work with and the companies that they get their packaging sourced through and what have you, is understand what those needs, missions, and journeys are, and then where the packaging is relevant to them and how they can create that value exchange with their customers to make it something they want to engage with, rather than something that they just want to hide on the shelf or in the cupboard or whatever it may be. And if we can find those solutions, there are great opportunities to do lots and lots of different things and create, with AI now, create really personalized content based on people's previous search history or buying frequency, loyalty, or whatever it might be. Create really bespoke, unique, personalized experiences that we just haven't had until now. Package used to be, like I remember as a kid, we collected up the tokens on the Kellogg cereal boxes to get the bowls, or Weetabix to get the Atlas, or whatever it might be. And more recently, it's been Merlin passes and stuff like that in the UK. They're great because they're relevant. They're relevant to a customer. So you go out, you make the purchase, it creates loyalty, it creates trial, whatever it might be. I think in the digital age, those things have to evolve. They have to become relevant in different ways. I wasn't part of the project when I was at Kellogg, but they've just launched their the QR codes on the packs for the visibly impaired, so that you can help identify what is in the pack and all of those things. And I think it's a fantastic initiative. Unilever have done exactly the same thing. Really great initiatives because it's relevant to a very specific target audience that previously wouldn't have engaged, but now it adds value to them in a very different way. And I want to see more of those things because I think there's so much more potential to do it now that packaging is more than just the box around the product.
Definitely. I mean, we just had Steve on a couple of sessions earlier talking about the Navi lens from Kellogg's, and it's a really interesting yet powerful, both from a brand perspective. Their main aim was more around enabling more of their audience rather than brand positioning, but I'm sure brand positioning comes into it. Of course, you do something to be good as well, to be looked on favorably. But I think that's a really great point in terms of thinking about the specific audience that's going to scan and being able to create something that's specific for them. But I think that we move into this new media, as we start thinking about packaging, there's going to be a lot of challenges. Katie, what kind of challenges can you imagine that brands are going to have if they're trying to create something specific, storytelling in this way? What can you imagine is something they need to be aware of?
I think the challenge for packaging is the challenge most brands have across all of their own real estate. They don't understand what data they have on their own audiences. They plan in silos. If you look at, obviously I'm coming at it from an agency point of view, but brand and performance are planned by separate teams. I think the challenges big brands are going to have is that they don't really know where packaging sits. Is it a piece of experiential media? Is it a part of retail media? Is it part of a social extension product? And I think agencies are coming to the party really late. You can see them all cobbling around trying to get a retail media arm. And I honestly just don't think they have the expertise. I think a lot of retail media expertise is housed within the duopoly. Amazon has been a reseller, had a reseller arm to their, it's been the main thrust of their proposition for a really long time. They've got the experience And I think the people that brands rely on to tell them about their comms as part of a wider media ecosystem just don't really have the specialism. And I think that would be something that a lot of brands struggle with.
What do you think, Gregor, is going to be one of the challenges? So kind of lack of specialism within, you know, standard agency, I suppose, is really what you're saying, Katie. Gregor, what do you see as a challenge there?
I think there's probably two from a manufacturer perspective. You know, I've been a manufacturer for the better part of 20 years, and I will stress I'm not one at the moment. But from a manufacturer's perspective, the first thing that's always going to come up is cost, because even if you know, an NFC tag or, you know, QR code is going to add, you know, fractions of a penny to a box, we're talking billions of boxes a year that are going through, you know, Mars or through Coca-Cola or whoever it might be. So cost is going to be a big one. And where do we attribute that cost to? Does it come out of a marketing budget? Is it going to come out of the sales budget? Is it going to come out of the supply chain budget? The interesting thing, though, is I think what we're going to see is multiple uses for the same piece of technology. So, you know, last year when I was on here, I was talking about sustainability. And one of the things I talked about is, wouldn't it be brilliant if packaging told recycling centres what it was, so that it could be more easily and more readily recycled? Now, if you start looking at this through a sustainability lens, then adding NFC tags onto specific pieces of packaging in order to identify it as, you know, grade A plastic, or, you know, 3.5 plastic, or whatever it might be, or cardboard, or you know, Tetra Pak, you can justify the cost there, so that when it's going through those machines, it's easily identified. But you know what? If you scan the same thing with an iPhone, it's going to start giving you the user reviews from Tesco.com, or it's going to start sharing user-generated content with you, or it's going to add value in a slightly different way. So I think, you know, the way that cost challenge is going to be overcome is going to be through multiple uses of the same piece of technology. I think the other big challenge that every manufacturer is going to have to face into with this is, how do we change that consumer behavior? Because customers, they're not programmed at the moment to start using and engaging with packaging the way that we might want them to, and in the future might add a huge amount of value. You've got to have the right to be able to ask your customers to do something different with a package, right? Own label, yeah, if Own Label started wanting to collect your personal data, are you going to share it? Probably not. Yeah, you've got to have that reason for somebody to actually genuinely engage in the first place. And you've got to figure out how to get that message onto the box before you can start thinking about how you're going to get people to engage with it. Now, you know, if you follow Rory Sutherland, the guy from Ogilvy, who talks about behavioral science a lot, one of the things that he will say is there's always a technological solution to every problem, but there has to be a human solution as well. And I think the technology is now there. The technology will allow us to do lots and lots of different really fantastic things, but we've got to get that human solution in place as well, or otherwise the technological solution is just going to be wasted.
Definitely. That makes me think about really something you said earlier as well, Katie, which is collaboration. So we can have lots of technology people making lots of great technology, and we can have media agencies planning media, and we can have creative agencies planning creative, and all of those little silos. But it sounds to me like we need a bit more collaboration. What do you think, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think collaboration, but also agility. I think with that planning 360 comes the ability to be agile, not only with investment, but also optimizing that customer journey in real time, which I think, you know, I think if anything, the past year has taught us, it's the ability to fail fast and learn quicker. You know, if you think about Netflix, for example, who launched, you know, a subscription-based model, but then changed it and, you know, completely turned it on its head and went straight for ads. You know, they made a seismic change and didn't really learn quick that it hadn't worked out too well. And I think this, as a kind of channel, and packaging as a channel, I think there's a lot of scope to do it wrong, but I think success will come from learning from it really quickly, learning about the nuance of the channel. And I'm not necessarily sure anyone's done that correctly yet. you know, the coupon model, the adding value, you know, I get that. I think that is a, you know, a traditional promotion, but how you extend that to social media without it being clunky, how you incorporate that into above the line comms, what the role of that is in mobile and digital out of home when you're on your way into a store. I don't feel like anyone's connecting that customer journey quite well enough, and I do think it's about a lack of expertise in retail media.
Gregor, have you anything to add to that?
The one thing I would add to it is that I know from research that I've done myself, too few manufacturers have actually mapped their customer journey fully. So most manufacturers will have their offline customer journey, and you know, working with different media agencies, they will understand which traditional media channels their customers are receptive to. Too few manufacturers have actually followed that up and mapped their digital customer journey and looked at how the two things genuinely interact with each other. Because the media that I'm receptive to isn't necessarily the media that either of you are receptive to, and is not necessarily the media that everybody else listening into this is receptive to. So, you know, what you need to do is understand those target audiences, understand those needs, those missions, those journeys, and then what media touch points are most relevant to them. And for some, packaging will be a hugely relevant media touch point. For others, it won't be. There are situations in our life, like, you know, when you've got a newborn child, having a resource available, even just on the pack of a brand of, you know, Pampers or whatever it might be, that helps you being a new parent, you know, nappies for the first time, you know, filling bottles, all of that kind of stuff. Those are valuable resources for points in time. But then there are other product categories where you're like confectionery or whatever, which are hugely impulse driven, where actually that content's going to need to change over and over and over and over again. And manufacturers at the moment, in my view, aren't set up for that because they haven't done that customer mapping piece yet. But I think when it comes, these things are going to accelerate really quickly. And I think it's going to be a really exciting time. I've been saying for a while, manufacturers need to get good at being creative again. They've kind of given up being good at creative to the hands of supply chain efficiencies. I think manufacturers need to become good at being creative again. And I think this is one of those areas where creativity is going to flourish in the next 5 years. It's going to be pretty cool to watch, actually.
So I think it's fair to say that we think that packaging is definitely a new media. It should be explored. We should be looking at what exactly that means to each of the customer groups. But what final piece of advice would you each give to any of the brands who want to unlock brand storytelling, unlock some of those opportunities? What would you say to any of the brands that are watching now who want to get started and haven't yet?
I think my direction would be, don't innovate for innovation's sake. I would say understand what innovation means for your brand, and plan for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd just go back to something that Katie said earlier on, which is around this whole experimenting, testing, learning. Yeah, you've got to have a right to play to begin with. But I think once you know that you do and your customers want to engage with you in that way, it's relevant to them, experiment, try different things. You know, some people, the sustainability message will be really important. For other categories, for other products, it won't be. You know, coupons, I think, have probably done their day, QR code based coupons, but other things will come through. And I think it's worth just trying, experimenting, and working to see what works for your customer.
Absolutely. Really, really great points. Thank you so much for the fantastic discussion. I think we've all learned quite a few different points there, especially in terms of being able to think about those different audience groups, but also think about this as a different place. Don't just package up what you're doing and stick it in because it's the new media and I can get the same asset over there. So really nice, insightful discussion. Thank you so much, Gregor Murray, VP Strategy at DCG, and Katie Livesley, CEO at Dentsu. Thank you Managing Director. Thank you so much. Sorry.
I like my promotion. I hope it'll be reflected in my next paper.
I don't know if you're getting a salary raise to match, but anyway, thank you so much to you both. Please, everyone, stick around. After the 5-minute break, we will be hearing from Ivan, and we're going to be talking about Recycler and fantastic ways where connected packaging and sustainability come together. See you all in a couple of minutes.